It is now 6:30, and if we could have your attention and ask that you please join us this evening with the invocation by Senior Chaplain Jamel McKenzie with our police department. And after that, we will stand and please join in with us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd like to invite those of you that would like to pray with me to join me. Dear everlasting God, we thank you for all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for the sustenance and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thank you for loving us with your boundness and gracious nature. In the scriptures, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for our Board of Commissioners this evening, our chair, June Wood, Johnny Wilson, D. William Clemens, Gary Barnham, Blake Prince, Bruce Holmes. And we also pray for all those that are in leadership in this county. We ask that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, and give them a sense of welfare of the true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, and confidence in what is good and fitting. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved Henry County. It is in your most blessed name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And again, welcome to tonight's Board of Commissioners meeting. We're now hereby calling the meeting to order. We do have a couple of announcements regarding the agenda. The following planning and zoning items that were advertised for this meeting have now been postponed, and these cases are, and they will be rescheduled and the properties will be reposted. The first planning and zoning that has been rescheduled is regarding the Green Valley Golf Club of Locust Grove regarding a modification of the master development plan for the property known as Eagles Brook Country Club. We also have Southern Consultant LLC of Stockbridge. That one is going to be rescheduled as well, and that is regarding a rezoning from RA to C3. For the property located on the east side of Mount Olive Road north of Jonesboro Road. And then the other public hearing that has been postponed is with Parent Homes of LLC of Duluth regarding a modification to zoning conditions for the property known as Villages at Walnut Creek. Again, these have been postponed and rescheduled. Regarding the agenda, just before we begin the first item, we will ask our Deputy County Manager to come and bring forth a weather conditionings update. So at this time, I call for a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
So moved.
We have a motion, and I think I heard a second. All in favor? Any discussions, concerns? Consider the agenda approved as amended. So, yes.
To the agenda for items that are being removed by the county manager.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Thank you again. So we'll need to, again, include these agenda items as well. Again, we're going to postpone the planning and zoning items that were just stated, but we're also removing item 4, which is Georgia's Librarian of the Year Award. We're also going to remove item 7 regarding the 2017 Comprehensive Annual Fiscal Financial Report and the CAFR update. And we're also removing item 9A, the county manager's end of year update. So again, as noted with these amended items, we'll call for a motion to amend the agenda as just repeated.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? So thank you. We do have a completed amended agenda now. So thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Good night, good evening. Just want to give a quick update what our EMA staff has prepared for us. It's been a little change since our 5:30 call meeting, but for the public and the television audience, we'll give that update. As of 5 o'clock, our DOT, our state DOT, has brined all of I-75 in Henry County and prepare this of the winter weather. Our DOT trucks and DOT staff are on standby with a list of priorities to actually put the sand down. For example, our high-risk fire stations, our hospital that has an elevated ambulance ramp. There are no shelters opening this time, but we have designated some areas for rehab for families or citizens that need it that we find without shelter in the streets. We do have some operational guidelines for that we've secured. Henry County schools have closed officially for tomorrow, and the Henry County Health Department has officially closed. We've also made the announcement to all county employees that we'll start normal operating business at 10 o'clock in the morning. That'll give us time to evaluate the roads and make sure everything's safe. Our public safety departments will be out 24/7. Our EMA staff also will have a weather briefing with the weather service at 8 o'clock tonight to get updates. The last update we had 30 minutes ago that we're now into the 2-inch of snow accumulation area, where it was a 0.1 to a ½ inch earlier. We've been moved up to the 2-inch area of accumulation for Henry County. So we'll keep you updated. If you have any questions, definitely reach out. But I want to thank our public safety staff and our EMA staff for being on top of this and planning accordingly. Any questions?
Any questions from the board?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner.
Again, we thank you and appreciate that update, and do ask that our public safety is safe while we're making sure that others are safe as well. All right, we will now move into our consent agenda. The following agenda items are considered on the consent agenda. We have a resolution from the Henry County Fire Department accepting a donation in the amount of $27,387 from Henry County Fire Department golf tournament participants and the associated budget amendment. We also have another resolution from the Henry County Fire Department accepting a donation in the amount of $500 from the Tanger Outlet Center and its merchants to the Henry County Fire Department and an associated budget amendment. And then we have a resolution from the Henry County Police Department, a resolution accepting a donation in the amount of $500, also for the Tanger Outlet Center and its merchants to the Henry County Police Department and its associated budget amendment. We have two resolutions in transit. One, approving the submittal of a grant application for transportation services provided to elderly and disabled individuals through the Department, Georgia, of Health and Human Services for fiscal year 2019 in the amount of $698,000. And then there's another resolution approving the submittal of a grant application to receive additional funds for transportation services provided to the elderly and disabled individuals through the Georgia Department of Human Services for fiscal year 2018 in the amount of $45,000. Are there any of these consent agenda items that need to be removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, and this ends our consent agenda. We're now moving to item 8 regarding our planning and zoning. We have made an announcement at the beginning of the meeting, but for anyone who may have missed it, the following planning and zoning items in District 2 were advertised for this meeting but have been postponed and will not be heard tonight, and the properties will be reposted. Again, these items are the Green Valley Golf Club of Locust Grove, Georgia, requested a modification. Also, the Perrin Homes LLC of Duluth, Georgia, requesting a modification of zoning conditions has been postponed and rescheduled. And then the Southern Consulting LLC of Stockbridge requesting a rezoning from RA to C3. Again, these public hearings have been postponed and rescheduled. We're now moving to the public hearing regarding the Reservoir Group of the Watkinsville, Georgia, requesting a zoning from RA to R3 for the property located at 337 East Lake Road and in District 4. So we definitely welcome Mr. Stacy Jordan Rudisill to make the presentation.
Good evening, Chair Wood.
Good evening.
Commissioners. The item before you tonight is located on East Lake Road across from the Union Grove Middle School. On November the 9th, the Zoning Advisory Board heard the request and recommended approval with 4 conditions. The property is currently zoned RA, residential agricultural, as indicated in this green hatched area. And you can see that there are subdivisions in the immediate vicinity of the subject property. The future land use map calls for low-density residential between 1 and 2 dwelling units per acre, as indicated in this yellow area. And the applicant's net density is proposed to be up to 2 dwelling units per acre, which did not require a comprehensive plan amendment. The conditions that were recommended by the Zoning Advisory Board are transportation-oriented in nature, and they were recommended by our Henry County DOT staff. The applicant has received a variance approval from the requirements of the Highway Corridor Overlay District as it relates specifically to the street grid system within the proposed development, and the reason for that is because there's a lake, so it's not feasible to have a grid system that's indicated by the Highway Corridor Overlay District, and so they were approved for a variance in that regard. The Zoning Advisory Board also approved the option of the applicant developing the subject property as a conservation subdivision, and that means that they can't have any more lots than what they could have under a conventional subdivision, but they can group the lots together so that they can save the infrastructure and so forth, and so they can have smaller lots that could be as small as 10,890, but the number of lots is based upon the yield plan that is illustrated for your review here, and it does show that they can develop up to 50 lots in a conventional subdivision manner. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll also like the applicant to come and make his presentation, so.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Steve Moore, Bass Consulting, 1350 Keys Ferry Court, McDonough, Georgia, representing the Reservoir Group tonight in this rezoning request. Yeah, as Stacy mentioned, property we believe is very conveniently located close to schools, church, other compatible uses. It's approximately 42 acres of land, and I understand this property's got some history associated with it. Maybe a year or two ago, there was a request for a rezoning that I understand, raised some controversy, and it was much more aggressive than the application that we're proposing. And I'd like to just show just a side by side of the two, if that's. So the one on the left is what was originally requested and denied, which was R4. Those lots were 12,000 square feet in size. The lots that on the right, the layout on the right is what we're proposing. So there were 72 lots, 12,000 square foot each. On the left, our request is R3, which are 18,000 square foot lots, and there's 50 of them proposed. We meet the number of lots that you're allowed to have on a single entrance, and believe it's a better use of the land, better preservation of some of the natural resources on the site. But just wanted to make sure it was clear that this is a completely different developer. He had nothing to do with the prior application. This is a brand new application, brand new project, and we think it's going to be a very superior product and project than what was proposed originally. Again, based on a proximity to the schools, the church, feel like it's an appropriate use. We believe something is going to go there, and we think that the plan that we've come up with is an appropriate use of the property. We've proposed internal sidewalks for the school-age children and others that want to be able to walk to these different facilities. There's also a 10-foot multi-use path proposed along the frontage that's consistent with the Highway Protection Overlay District. And again, a preservation of the natural resources, buffers on the streams, on the lake. Our intent is to use that lake for recreational purposes for the residents in the community. We believe it's going to be a very nice product. The price point should be in the upper level of what is in that area. We believe we're consistent and compatible with the zoning of the property immediately north and east of us, which is R3, the old R2, but it's the same thing as the current R3, 18,000 square foot lots. We're consistent with the comp plan. We've, again, received unanimous approval, as Stacy mentioned, from the Zoning Advisory Board for our request, and hope that you guys will give us the same, and I'm happy at this point to answer any questions that you've got.
Are there any questions before we open it up for a public hearing? Okay.
Comments to the end?
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, this is a public hearing, so we're going to begin the public hearing. And this does allow persons wishing to be heard in opposition to the request will have a total of 10 minutes. And if likewise, those who are wishing to speak in favor will have a total of 10 minutes. So if there is multiple speakers in opposition, we ask that you please work together to utilize the 10 minutes, as well as those who may be in favor. If there is more than one, to please work together to utilize the 10 minutes. So those wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward now, and we will begin the time. So thank you. Would you please state your name and address, please?
It's Honorable Commissioners, it's nice to see you this evening, and thank you for your service, okay? My name is Kathy Zavlonsky. My husband and I are homeowners in District 3, right off of Elliott Road in Eastlake. I will let you know, I wrote my comments down to preserve time because I can be rather verbose. But if you do have questions of my concerns, I'll be glad to expand off of the comments that I have here. I'm currently an executive for a bank here in the Southern Crescent of Atlanta, and I have chosen to make my home for my family here in Henry County. We've currently been here 13 years. I'm asking you to vote against the proposed development tonight for many reasons. I am happy to hear that the number of lots are much bigger and that there are less homes that will be there listed, because originally, based on the zoning request of an R3, many more homes could have gone on those lots. So I am thankful to hear that. However, I am not happy about the opening of that subdivision dumping right into Union Grove Middle School. So one of my main reasons is the traffic. Now, I do have a video I will be glad to show you if you guys have internet access, and we can bring up the video of traffic and congestion there at Eastlake in the mornings and in the afternoons. It is backed up for over a mile to get to Eastlake because of the traffic there already. Now, given if you put a crosswalk in to cross over to the school, that's just going to back up the traffic further because of the time it takes to get those children across the street. I was unable to get the DOT traffic counts prior to this meeting to figure out how much traffic is traveling. I would suggest that the website be updated to reflect that, because all they have currently are estimates. And if you look at a 5-year number on the traffic count for those areas, based off the estimates, it was twice as much traffic over the last 5 years. We can assume that every homeowner living in that development will live there because of the schools. So I'm concerned about the number of children that would actually be attending the schools. It's very dangerous as it stands today to cross that road. And again, I referenced that they want to propose the entrance to dump in right into the middle school, which is right across the street. It doesn't matter if you move the entrance 50 feet to me or 100 feet. It's not about the entrance, it's about the number of homes and the homes going right there at the school system. Our schools are at capacity. I did confirm today by talking with Stacy that they did consult the Board of Education. They did consider 104 new students, which is 4 classrooms. There are trailers already at 2 of the 3 that are sitting there. Now, I have my child here today who would be glad to state to you how much he hates being in a trailer. He has to sit at a table away from all the other kids because there's not enough desk in the trailer to put 32 or 35 children. I mean, that is ridiculous. We need to look at more realistic numbers, and we need to deal with the infrastructure that does not exist on Eastlake Road today. And probably most importantly, my concern is safety. There's not a day that doesn't go by, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, that I do not confront a possible accident traveling on that road and within 2 miles of Eastlake. I'm speaking specifically of Elliott Road, Campground, Highway 155, and then back to Eastlake. There seems to be more accidents at the intersection of East Lake and Highway 155 where Shane's, Dunkin' Donuts, Rite Aid, and McDonald's and Kroger all corner that area. In fact, my mother-in-law was in a serious accident right there at Highway 155 in East Lake because she had a poor line of sight coming across the intersection. If you're coming home from work, you can bet that it's coming down 45 miles an hour from East Lake Parkway to come to East Lake, and you come over that hill right there at 155, people are pulling right out from Shane's and Dunkin' Donuts. And it's just amazing someone has not been killed there. In addition, my concern is that we have minor arterials that are feeding into East Lake right around the school, and there are lots of near misses there. Now, as a banker, obviously there's some conflict of interest potentially for me because I believe in sound developments. I am for small business growth, and that's obvious from my service with my employer. I am for a community that's working together to make sound decisions for our children's safety. And I understand that the owner of the land wants money for an asset. I am here protecting my asset. The county should consider this land for our schools. That's another proposed development for this. We are running short already on space for children to practice soccer, lacrosse, football, and baseball. Why wouldn't the county consider developing that land right there for the school system? We do have that shortage of space. I appreciate your time, and I encourage you and urge you to decline the request that's been presented. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? We have 4 minutes and 45 seconds available.
Carl Swinson from Stockbridge. I am against these types of developments for one reason and one reason only, and that is we always put the cart before the horse. The infrastructure is an afterthought, and if you don't believe me, drive down 155 right now. It's a mess. We've got to start doing the right thing first, and that is to build the roads, build the access, put the infrastructure in, increase the capacity of the schools, and then maybe we can start thinking about bringing more people, because you're bringing more people in before we have the ability to withstand it. The traffic is going to be brutal. Everybody who's traveled that knows that. It's the same thing on 155, and that's all I've got to say.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dennis Lancaster. I live at 170 Terra Trace, McDonough, 30252. It's in Ashley Downs subdivision, which is off of John Elliott Road. Again, with others that have stated, I have no real issue with the owners of the land wanting to develop it and develop their assets. However, as has been stated already, the issue of traffic and safety was brought up at the planning and zoning meeting, but that didn't seem to carry as much weight. However, one of the things in looking over the documents that were included in the proposal, in Ashley Downs, we're just down John Elliott Road, around the corner from this development, and there are 26 homes in that subdivision. They're all a minimum of 1 acre per lot, per home. The homes are all minimum square footage of 2,500 square feet. In the comparisons in Table 3 of the document where the characteristics of the developments in the area, for some reason, Ashley Downs, which is very close by, in fact, is closer than Crown Springs, it was inadvertently overlooked in that comparison. So we, the homeowners of Ashley Downs, feel like that we have a vested interest in the value of our property as much as anyone, and we do not appreciate smaller sized homes and smaller lots. Henry County, the history of Henry County has been more space per home. There are certain areas of Henry County that are developing where it's more dense, but out where we are in East Lake, it's mostly cow pastures and agricultural, it just doesn't seem to fit that there would be putting that many homes in that small of a space, especially around a lake and a stream. So we at Ashley Downs would ask that you vote against the R3 rezoning.
Thank you.
My name is Merritt Wofford. I'm also a resident of the Union Grove District. I'm living right behind the high school, currently suffering through the closure of Campground Road right now because Westonite has become the thoroughfare. If y'all want to take that into agenda, I would appreciate it, considering local traffic is going down a narrow road, but I will skip that for now. The proposal right now, y'all have already approved a huge development that is going to dump right into this road, and that's the Super Kroger. And to add more traffic to the area, you have on East Lake, right up from this entrance, a major development coming in that's already increasing traffic on that side of the road. We do not need more cars, more students, and on top of the fact of you're putting all of this right where you have the most inexperienced drivers in that area. I have 2 high schoolers. I have a very vested interest in students driving, and there seems to be no consideration for that fact. When y'all are planning all this development in an area around schools, I don't understand. This area should be a protected area, an area that these kids can drive to school in a safe manner, and we have created the most dangerous intersection. One of mine has already had an accident at that intersection. But the development of this, we're not ready. And like the gentleman said before, our infrastructure cannot handle more traffic. I invite any of you and all of you to come to Union Grove Middle School any day of the week before and after school. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We now will invite, we now have 10 minutes for those who would like to speak in favor. If I see one person that wants to stand in opposition, can I just ask for those who want to stand in opposition to please stand so that we can just recognize you? Thank you. Okay. We will now move into the public hearing portion of those wishing to speak in favor. There will be 10 minutes allocated total for those wishing to speak in favor. So those who wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Calling again, anyone wishing to speak in favor to please come forward. Okay, well, this concludes our public hearing. We'll now just allow the applicant and our Mr. Rudisell to remain and address any questions from the board. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, Commissioner Prince.
Thank you, Chairman. Afternoon, evening, Stephen. Please excuse me. I have the flu. I am sick as a dog. I do not need to be here, so I am going to try to work through this. My voice is coming in and out. As soon as this vote is over, I am going to leave, go home, go to bed. I always like to start these things by giving a little background of who I am. I have lived in the 4th District for 40 years. When I moved to the 4th District, Crumbly Road was dirt. There was only about 12 homes on Kellytown. The reason I ran for office was to stop all the nonsense growth. I'm not anti-growth, but I am about wise growth. Now, that being said, speaking with my neighbors, speaking with the people that live around me, and I do live in Kellytown. My daughter graduated from Union Grove. I am very familiar with the area, been there a very, very long time, drive through it every day. Some of the things we have to look at is really it's a balancing act between the legal rights of the owner and what we as residents of Kellytown want to see. Traffic always comes up first, number one thing. And I have to agree with everyone here, traffic is absolutely terrible. Right through there, it is bad. But when you talk about the legal rights of the homeowner, traffic is not their issue of the property owner. You can't say that traffic is their problem and Henry County has to stop growth because of traffic. What ends up happening in the long run, if I deny this applicant. They have the opportunity to take us to court. They'll sit in front of a judge, and I have to have legal reasons to turn this down. Traffic is not a legal reason. A judge will simply say, Commissioner, you need to improve traffic in that area. And before we get into the traffic situation, Henry County needs $3.2 billion, that's with a B, billion dollars to fix the traffic system in this county. It didn't get here overnight. We're working on it slowly. As someone mentioned, Campground Road is under construction. There's a lot of different areas that are under construction. But this is not something that I can legally turn them down for. Another thing, schools, overcrowding, same thing. That is the government's responsibility to increase the size of school. Is not the property owner's responsibility. Property values, again, another thing. I did hear about making this into part of an area for the school. That would be wonderful. I'm sure the owners would love to sell it to the school, but we're the Board of Commissioners, not the Board of Education, and I don't know what really the plans they have. But as we look at this, Stacy, can you put up the overlay map with the surrounding zoning? Yes. Now, the subdivision that is adjacent to the green area that's hatched, I want everybody to look at that, the yellow area. That is R3. I don't know which commissioner did that, but they set a legal precedence. And again, for me to turn this down, I have to have some legal reason. In the area, there are larger lots. Typically, that's what we like to see in Kellytown. But again, I have to have some legal reason. That being said, well, before I make a call on what I'm going to call on this, do any other commissioners have any comment or concerns or questions at this time?
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? There are no other questions.
Okay.
So considering there are no other questions, are you prepared to make a motion?
I am prepared to make a motion. And Steve, looking at this, I just can't give you R3. It goes against everything I stand for and everything I believe. You know, we all moved out there to get away from the hustle and bustle. I don't think there's a citizen out there in Kellytown that is looking for a tiny, tiny lot in a big, big house. All of us moved there for the same reason, and we all want to stay there. And what I'm afraid of is that we get into where we overdevelop this area and it loses its community feel and it just becomes a place to live. And that's my home. That's where I grew up. And it's a community, and we like that community. Now, I know you're sitting there, and you and I have been doing this a long, long time. And I know exactly what's running through your mind right now. If you go to court with me and you abut a R3 subdivision, you're going to beat me. And you're right. You know, but some things we're fighting for. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Keep us from going down this path and you going and taking me to court and us going back and forth. I'm going to do a different zoning. I'm going to do R2S. R2S is in between R2 and R3. I don't know what the yield's going to look like on R2S, but that's about what I'm willing to do. To tell my constituent what R2S is. R2S is bigger lots than that R3 subdivision beside it. R2S is an R2 subdivision with sewer. All around through that area we have basically R2S. It's not the ideal situation, but again, we have to work together and try to make sure we move this in the right direction. One thing I am going to add, in addition to my recommendation for R2S, we have the stipulations here. I would like to see craftsman-style homes added in with side entry where feasible. And to explain to my constituents exactly why I'm specifying this, the style home that we put there is very, very important. we've all seen the brick boxes. None of us care for the brick boxes. Well, a craftsman-style home is what we have in Kellytown. That's what majority of us live in, is craftsman-style. And so we're going to try to stay true to the neighborhood, to our home, and what we have there. So you have that written down.
Yes, sir.
The 1 through 4 is fine, and we'll add that as number 5. Do you want to read those into the record, or do you just want to do it as shown?
I'll be pleased to read it if you'd like.
Yeah, I think it would be good to go ahead and read them so that everyone will know what they are.
Okay. Please read them for the record.
Yes, number 1, right-of-way shall be preserved along the site's frontage at 60 feet from the existing center line of East Lake Road to the site side. Number 2, the entrance of the subdivision shall align with the center line of Union Grove Middle School driveway. The entrance shall be located such that the minimum intersection site distance and the minimum spacing requirement are met per the road's posted speed limit, and shall have a deceleration lane and acceleration taper designed and constructed to Henry County DOT standards. Henry County DOT may require a modification of the boulevard entrance as it relates to the positioning of the school crossing guard. Number 3, should a crosswalk across East Lake Road be required, the owner or developer shall provide to Henry County DOT a crosswalk study completed by a professional traffic operations engineer. Upon Henry County DOT approval of the study, the developer or owner will be required to install all related improvements per the approved study. Number 4, if street trees are to be placed in the right-of-way, the street tree utility placement standard must be used and adhered to in order to provide for an acceptable placement of the trees in conjunction with the utility placement location. Number 5, all houses shall be of a craftsman style with side entry garages where feasible.
That being said, I can tell that you're not very pleased with this, but I'm not going to ask if it's okay, because it is what it is. At this time, Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve R2S with the 5 conditions as read.
All right, we've got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Any further questions or comments from the board? All in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move into our next public hearing, which is RZ 1724, Buddy Kelly Properties of McDonough requesting a rezoning from RA to C3 in District 3. And we'll welcome up Mr. Justin Kilgore for the presentation.
Good evening, Chair Wood and
evening.
Commissioners. If I may show you the maps here for Buddy Kelly Properties. This is the subject property on the aerial. Snapping Shoals Road, Highway 81, Jackson Lake Road. The current zoning map. The surrounding properties are all RA. The future land use map shows the corners as future land use being commercial. This area up here is the Henry County Water and Sewage Authority area. And if I can get them to zoom in on that site plan a little bit. If I may, this is the canopy, convenience store, and proposed office building on the site. And here is the survey of the site. And on November 9th of 2017, the Zoning Advisory Board made a recommendation, and that was to, they recommended denial of the request, which was to zone the property C3, but approval of C1 with the staff conditions shown. And I can answer any questions if you like.
Okay, is the applicant here to come forth with the presentation?
Members of the board, Madam Chair,
Good
my name is
evening.
Andy Welch. I represent Buddy Kelly Properties in this rezoning request. Rezoning request. The request is as applied for is a commercial C3 zoning request for this intersection. As the staff has already reported to you, Justin has made very clear that the future land use map contemplates a commercial zoning for the 3 corners that are not already designated in an industrial use by the Water Authority. And the request here is obviously to do that. Staff has done an exceptional job of going through the application requests and pointing out to you reasons why C3 may not be ideal for this particular area. The Planning and Zoning Commission has also reviewed this, and they have considered the request. And although we would prefer that they would have accepted a C2 zoning classification with limited conditions, it recommended to you a C1 zoning classification with conditions. The request is before you. We would appreciate a favorable consideration. Our preference would have been the C2 zoning classification with conditions, but we understand that the staff has recommended a C1 zoning classification, and the Zoning Advisory Board has also recommended a C1 zoning classification with conditions, and we'll leave that to your better judgment as to which way you should go with that. But that's our request. If there are questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Are there any questions from the board before we begin the public hearing? Okay, thank you. We're going to begin the public hearing and invite you back. So at this time, this is a public hearing for RZ 1723. Those persons wishing to speak in opposition will be given a total of 10 minutes, and those who are wishing to speak in favor will be given a total of 10 minutes. Again, please be sensitive to others that may want to come and speak, because there will be a total of 10 minutes for opposition and 10 minutes in favor. So at this time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward and please state your name and address.
My name is Phil Huff. I live at 2369 Snapping Shoals Road. I have lived there since 1975. The area in question, in a radius of as close as 2 miles and as far away as 4.5, there are already 2 Dollar General stores, 1 Family Dollar, a smattering of gas stations, and commercial property that is sitting vacant, that has never been occupied. I moved down there when there was absolutely nothing. I have seen unbelievable growth. Since that time, people have moved into the county, things have changed drastically. Land values have gone up. I understand all that. But most of the people who live in that area moved out there to get away from just such as this development. This is not the way to bring people into the county. This is a way to chase them away, where they'll move further out to get away from this. If this development is allowed to go forward, that will make every intersection from the county line, this is a major intersection, all the way to McDonough, commercial property with some sort of service station and or commercial space with it. It will be solid. I know you don't want to hear about traffic, but I've lived there so long, that intersection has been the site of many, many, many fatal car collisions. There is now a roundabout there trying to control it. I'm saying we don't need it, and we certainly don't want it. And I speak for a lot of the people in my neighborhood and general area. So I would hope that you would not allow such development, but that's basically all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, y'all. I'll try to be brief here. My name's Dan Newcomb. I live out in Ola in Commissioner Wilson's district. Like you said, many of us out there We live out there for a reason. I moved out there 18 years ago. Yes, I was part of the problem. But we moved out there knowing full well if we needed something from the grocery store or something in a hurry, it's a 7-mile trek. We were fine with that. As he mentioned, within a 4.5-mile radius, there's gas stations, 3 gas stations, and actually 3 Dollar Generals within that radius. We're good. The original report by the zoning staff seemed to be very critical of this proposal. I know they mentioned a lot about the C3 versus C1, but a lot of their points resonate regardless of what C kind you put out there. The proposed change in zoning would have a negative effect on the character of the area. Adjoining properties are mostly underdeveloped or residential, and all surrounding properties are RA. Impact on the adjacent property would be detrimental. And this one right here is very key to me. The proposed rezoning would establish a precedent for commercial in this area, allowing others to potentially justify their commercial request. Let's be honest, nobody wants to live next door to a gas station unless they're hoping to get their property rezoned as commercial and cash out. Commercial development in a rural area like this is a cancer. Once it starts, people no longer want to live near it. They have a hard time selling a house, so that you see these signs pop up saying potential commercial. And it just grows from there. Take a look at Terra Boulevard in the 90s. That's exactly what happened. It should be noted that the property owner of all the corners not owned by the Water Authority is Mr. Buddy Kelly, the applicant, so I'm sure we'll be back here pretty quickly about this. As for the flume, the staff said that the flume is for 2030 and keeps changing. The Crossroads Centers was removed and not yet finished, and the not yet finished 24 flume is taking the rural nature of the area into account. Steps were taken to reduce the commercial designation for this area, and it kind of alludes to the fact that this commercial area here is a leftover from the 2020 plan that migrated to 2030 when they took out the activity centers. The report from staff says it can be developed as is, as RA, and while this might not be the most profitable, that is not a reason just solely for rezoning. This is a residential area. This is not the last RA house like in the movie Up, sitting in the middle of a bunch of warehouses. The flume is a guideline, not a binding document. Mr. Welch has argued many times himself about changing the flume for his clients so that it's a benefit for their rezoning. It shows that this is a living document and not always correct. Staff said it would be premature to state that C3 is consistent with the land use plan in light of the upcoming 2040 plan, which makes me think somebody's wanting to get this rezoning done now, strike while the iron is hot, possibly due to a potential change coming up. And even if the plan does show this as commercial in the future, this is a long-term plan stretching out to 2030 or 2040. That doesn't mean we have to build everything in this plan right away. It reminds me of my daughter. As soon as she gets a little bit of money, just wants to run out and spend that right away at the bookstore. We have so many gas stations in the area, I'm worried about lighting my grill outside for all the fumes. So we're asking you to stop the over-provisioning out there. We don't need a gas station out there. We don't need any other items that are allowed under C1, 2, or 3. That's the potential property, and you can see all the lots around it. These are not plots of land. These are people's hopes, their dreams, their lives. And that would be the only commercial sitting in a bunch of houses out there. So while I know that it is a lot easier said than done, in the words of Nancy Reagan, just say no. Thank you.
Good evening. I too am a resident of District 3, and I moved in Henry County 15 years ago.
Your name and address, please.
I'm Veronica Veal, 258 Fannin Lane, McDonough. I too moved in Henry County about 15 years ago, so maybe I'm a part of the problem. However, my major concern is not that just this developer, but I have concern that we have no real plan for our district or our county. And when I say a real plan, each one of these developers are coming here, and no point against them. It's our commissioners who's supposed to look out for our constituents. My concern is that we're just allowing piecemeal here, piecemeal there. Where's the big plan? What do we want Henry County to look like with all of this growth? We allow developers to come in and drive and design the character of our county for us instead of us doing that. We need our commissioners to stand up and do what's right by your constituents. We need you to work for us, which we selected you to work for us and not for the developers. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Mayo. I live at 582 Jackson Lake Road. I have been a resident for 24 years. We have 59 acres plus. The reason I moved there with my family is for a better quality of life. And I live 1 mile from that roundabout. It has gotten bad. I understand progress, but please do not put anything at that corner. It's bad enough the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Calling again. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? We will now grant 10 minutes to anyone wishing to speak in favor of this zoning. Again, requesting anyone who wishes to speak in favor to please come forward. Well, thank you. This concludes our public hearing. We'll ask the applicant to come back and see if there are any questions or comments from the board. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes.
Justin, this question is for you. This falls within the overlay. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Can you go through the overlay and kind of give us a layout of what's required in the overlay?
Yes, sir. The overlay, it affects many of our highways and major roads through Henry County. This just happens to be one of them. It requires heavier architectural standards. It requires street lights. It requires street trees. It requires parcel interconnectivity. It also has prohibited uses, among other enhanced features that will make our corridors look considerably better than what they could with standard code. It's an overlay that enhances and provides extra standards on top of our base code.
Okay, about the lighting, it's some special lighting. It's not like your normal kind of lighting that you would see anywhere else.
Yes, sir, that's correct. It's specific. If you give me just a moment, I'll turn to that section.
Commissioner Barnes, if I can chime in very quickly, lighting is downcast. And it's the specific type of lighting that will actually be aesthetically pleasing. So you're looking at Cobra head, you're looking at pedestrian lighting on top of the street lighting in conjunction with the streetscaping requirement.
I understand there'll be a lot more landscaping than what the normal.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. How long has this been on the land use map as being designated as commercial?
As far as staff is aware, sir, I believe that goes back to the 2010 plan, or
okay.
The plan in between the 2020 and the previous plan, sir.
Yeah. Okay. The C1 that we're talking about is the lowest impact that you could put out there. It's more of a neighborhood type commercial. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. The definition of C1 is actually neighborhood commercial.
Okay. We got a letter from an attorney today. Patrick, would you kind of go through what our stand is on this and what happens if we turn this down and that kind of thing?
Sure. It's common in zoning cases that prior to the board's hearing that the applicant or an attorney for the applicant sends a letter like the one you all received from Mr. Welch. What that letter does is preserves the applicant's right to challenge your zoning decision in court. If they don't provide you that letter, they're barred from challenging the zoning decision. Assuming that the statements in the letter are followed through with. If there's a denial of the zoning, we would be in court arguing over the validity of the zoning decision. My job, obviously, is to defend whatever decision you make. That's my role, and I'm happy to defend whatever decision you make. As you and I have discussed, there's some things about this zoning case that are frankly problematic for the county. You've got the commercial use is consistent with the land use plan. You're on the corner of a major arterial and minor arterial intersection. You've got a traffic circle at that intersection. And all of those are very important. None of those by themselves make a difference, but the overriding thing that makes a difference is in order to justify a zoning decision, we have to basically be able to establish, or the property owner has to establish, that there is no reasonable economic use for the property as it's currently zoned. And I don't think anybody can legitimately say RA is an appropriate use for that property, because I don't think it'll get used. I don't think anyone would develop that property or utilize that property as residential, especially residential agriculture. If we do end up litigating the case, depending on, as Andy well knows, the Georgia Supreme Court has messed up zoning litigation to some extent. Nobody really knows exactly the procedure. But we would be faced with the position of having to hire real estate appraisers. We would have to hire our own land use experts, because our in-house experts have recommended approval. And we would be faced with that cost and that expense. And Mr. Welch's letter includes what the courts have seemed to open up of late, a potential for a claim for damages. I'm not sure that would fly or not, but we would be faced with defending that and face a potential for damages. You know, it's a difficult thing. A property on a state highway, on a corner with another arterial road, those are difficult, really difficult corners to preserve non-commercial uses. And, you know, we're also, another thing you have to think about is we're in the highway corridor overlay district, which kind of contemplates commercial zonings. I mean, there's a lot of things in this case that really do make it a little more difficult for us in a typical case. But ultimately, we would be faced potentially with a lawsuit, and all of our internal documents created by your staff and your internal experts recommend approval, and we would be faced with defending a position contrary to what your in-house experts have recommended, which is always a worst case for me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's about all I have.
Are any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion.
I'd make a motion that we deny the C3, but allow the C1 with staff conditions.
We've heard a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We heard a first and a second. Are there other questions or comments from the board? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. We'll now move into our next planning and zoning item, which is RZ 1722 with CNW Property Holdings 2 LLC of McDonough, requesting a rezoning from RA to C3 for the property located at Jonesboro Road and Mount Carmel Road in District 3. And we'll again recognize Mr. Kilgore for the presentation of this zoning.
Thank you, Chair Wood and Commissioners. Chair Wood, if I may point out something for you and those watching and listening on the agenda here, if I may show it. This item on the agenda, this should say C3 Highway Commercial. Just want to make that clear for anyone who may have been confused there.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
And the correction.
The case in front of you here is CNW Property Holdings 2 LLC. It is on Jonesboro Road. Their request is also for RA to C3 zoning. This is where Mount Carmel dead ends into Jonesboro Road. Here's the current zoning map showing the subject properties here, surrounded by commercial. And here is the future land use, showing a future land use designation of commercial. The site plan is composed of 9 parcels. There are some out parcels here up front, and a large one here in the back. And the survey. Staff has had extra conversations with the applicant since the Zoning Advisory Board meeting on November 9th of 2017. The Zoning Advisory Board recommended denial of the C3 request and approval of a C2 zoning with staff condition, as shown there. As I said, staff has had additional conversation with the applicant and what may go on that property in the future. And if it suits the pleasure of the board, staff would recommend the following condition there in blue. The C3 uses allowed as hotels only, permitting C2 and C1 uses along with staff conditions. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I-75.
I don't know an exact figure, sir, but it would appear to be about 1.5 miles or so, in that range, plus or minus.
Okay. And then with regards to the zoning in that particular area, because it seems like a mostly commercial area, is it mostly C3 in that particular area or C2?
If I may, sir. These darker parcels right here, sir, are C2, and this one right here is C1. They're predominantly C2. There is some C3 in the area, but it's mostly C2 right through here, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I would think if the property is located that close to I-75, we can expect to have a higher density. So I don't see any issues with C3 in this particular area.
Okay, other questions or comments from the board before we invite the applicant? Is the applicant here for a presentation as well? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Dale Hall with Falcon Design Consultants, address 235 Corporate Center Drive in Stockbridge, speaking on behalf of C&W Property Holdings this evening. I want to thank for the staff for meeting with us and discussing this zoning request in detail and providing a report that is very thorough. We do wish to have this zoned to a C3 highway commercial property. We do understand that it is within the highway corridor overlay. The purpose for the C3 would be to have potential of a hotel in that area with its proximity to the I-75 is within a little over 1 mile from the intersection there. We don't have a specific client right now or individual that's going to build that. However, we have had some talks, or my individual has had talks with some individuals that might be looking to do that. So our request would be a C3 for hotel use only. The highway corridor overlay does restrict some uses on there, which would be a concern to the area or individuals in the area. But we do agree with the proposal and recommendation of staff, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have on this application.
Okay, thank you. Any questions before we begin the public hearing? Okay, we'll begin the public hearing and then invite you back.
Thank you.
So at this time, we will enter into the public hearing and will allow 10 minutes for those wishing to speak in opposition and also 10 minutes for those wishing to speak in favor. Again, be sensitive to those if there are multiple individuals that like to speak in either way. So at this time, if you would like to speak in opposition, would you please come forward?
Hi, my name is Vitra McCoy, and I live at 3388 Out Homebridge Circle in Hampton.
And this development is going right down the street from where it was approved by the Board for R6 zoning, across the street from us in Crystal Lake Village. And we live like 3 miles down from I-75, so this would be closer to 2 miles from I-75. And I am opposed to that going in there due to, like everyone else is complaining about, the traffic in the area and the congestion that's going to create in that area. So I do oppose this.
Thank you.
I think it's a misunderstanding.
Yes, ma'am, can you come back?
This property is actually on the east side of 75. It's not near Crystal Lake.
On the opposite side?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's back toward McDonough.
Very good.
Falcon Developers, this is nothing against you. Again, this is about our commissioners that we have elected to take care of us, the constituents.
And
Again,
can you state your name and address again for the record?
my name is Veronica Veal, 258 Fannin Lane, McDonough. And I just want to reiterate that we need a plan, Henry County. We can't be bought out. We can't be scared out that we're going to go to court every time. We have an attorney there, and that's his job, to take care of Henry County. However, your job is to take care of the people who voted you in. And I wish all of them were here so they could hear my concerns. My concerns is that I feel all of these people are coming to Henry County because Henry County is prime location, not just for its residents, but also for those developers. And I don't have a problem with that because that's what they do. However, it's our job to take care of our residents and our constituents and speak for us. So let's stand up. We need you guys to stand up and do what's best for the county, regardless of whether we go to court or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
I'm feeling disagreeable tonight. Again, Dan Newcomb, Ola. My problem is if we go with a hotel, the impact it has on all the other hotels in the area. Not that competition is not a bad thing, but you see it at every exit. You have the prime exit. It's the great place to stay. And then something opens up an exit above or below it, and that exit crumbles. And this is going to have a detritus effect on the surrounding exits with their hotels. And eventually, somebody's going to build a nice new hotel down at exit, whatever, south of 212, down there. And this is going to become a $30, pay by the hour, pay by the night hotel as well. And it's going to be a long-term nightmare for this county. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Calling again. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? At this time, we'll now call for anyone who's wishing to speak in favor. Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Well, this concludes our public hearing regarding this zoning matter, and we'll ask the applicant to come forward to address any questions or comments from the board. So at this time, are there any questions or comments from the board? No more questions? No comments? Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion.
I move to approve rezoning to subject property to C3 highway commercial, limiting the C3 use to hotels only, permitting all C2 and C1 uses along with staff's conditions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Well, this concludes our public hearings for our planning and zoning matters, and as previously stated, we had item 9 removed from the agenda. We'll now move into the county attorney's resolution regarding the qualifying fees for elected county offices for 2018.
Good evening, Chair, board members. It is the time of the year where we adopt the qualifying fees for the county offices that come up for election in 2018. You will be asked to approve the qualifying fees for the following: County Commissioner Districts 3, 4, and 5, Board of Education Districts 4 and 5, State Court Judge, Chief Magistrate, and Solicitor General, the resolution that lists coroner, but the coroner's not actually up for election this time, so we'll strike that. And I do want to make one comment about the Solicitor General. That may come off. As you may be aware, the previous Solicitor General, Trey Pipkin, has been appointed to the Superior Court bench. The governor has yet to appoint a replacement. There's a law in Georgia, if the governor does appoint a replacement before this election, then that replacement actually gets to serve a year or two before he or she has to stand for re-election. But we're going to go ahead and approve the qualifying fee in case that doesn't happen. So I'd recommend that you go ahead and approve these qualifying fees so they can be published in the paper as required by law.
You've heard the presentation. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further questions or comments or concerns? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. At this time, we'll open up for public comments. Are there any public comments? I ask.
There's one.
We have
Carl
one.
Swinson.
Well, thank you. We welcome all citizens to voice their county-related concerns and opinions, which are not listed on the agenda. And all persons wishing to speak during public comments must sign in with the county clerk and complete the public comment speaker form prior to the beginning of the meeting to be recognized. We respect the First Amendment rights of each person who addresses the board and request citizens to be respectful. We request any concerns about an individual board member to be addressed with that commissioner, and any concerns about a county employee to be addressed with the county manager. So any person who makes personal, impertinent, slanderous, or profane remarks to any member of this board, staff, or general public will be interrupted by the chair or any member of the board for disorderly conduct as a warning. If the disorderly conduct continues, the chair or other board members will request the citizen to be excused from the meeting. So will you please call our one and only? Okay.
Carl Swinson once again from Stockbridge. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Prince brought up a very salient point to everything that we're dealing with here, and that is the degree to which we are behind on road construction infrastructure for the county. When you start talking $1 billion or more, we should be talking about moratoriums so that we can catch up. Because you're never going to catch up if you do not put a halt to what's going on. Now, I realize this is going to put a bit of pressure upon some of you up on the board, because developers wouldn't like that at all. But at some point, you have to get real. And the best example of not getting real is 155 right down here as it heads west of 75. Biggest nightmare I've seen. There's a lot of traffic out there in Kellytown. There's a lot of traffic on Jonesboro Road. But that one is just a nightmare supreme. I would strongly, strongly suggest that in your deliberations, you give some serious consideration to a moratorium so that we can catch up with this. And it's going to take a while. You hear the people. They're all talking about the same thing. And the curious part is that that's not a legal justification for not allowing high density or anything else that they want to do here. But it's the one thing that affects the people the most. And it's scary. It's scary. But you're going to have to suck it up at some point and do the right thing. And the right thing for the county is a moratorium on new construction until you've got a handle on all of the infrastructure that includes the roads, includes the schools, sewers. And if you really want to make the people of the county happy, you might even want to consider getting a new director for the water authority, because paying this man over $300,000 a year is not really in our best interest. So you've heard a lot about that, and you're going to continue to hear about that, because it's a waste of money. And what you're doing here is wasting our time, because you're going to continue to do the developments. You're going to continue to do them, and you're going to continue to put excess pressure, undue pressure upon the people that live here. They're the constituents that elected you into office. They're the ones you're supposed to be looking out after. And you hear them reference that. But on one side, you hear the legal side, oh, well, you can't deny them. Well, you can put a moratorium out there. That'll keep that from happening. It really will. So that's really about all I want to say right now. It's been a while since I've been here, but I'll be kind of acting like herpes and coming back again. So I just want to say, give some serious consideration to a moratorium on construction in the county to give the people enough time to build the infrastructure back up. Please, for everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you. That was all. We will now move into our next agenda item regarding the approval of the minutes for the January 3rd Board of Commissioners meeting. Were there any revisions or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, the floor is open for a motion for approval.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? We're now moved into the chair and commissioner comments. Are there any comments from anyone? Okay. I have none either. County manager, do you have any comments at this time? No. Okay. We'll then move into the upcoming meetings and events. Our January 23rd workshop meeting has been canceled. And then our next regular Board of Commissioners meeting is scheduled February the 6th at 9:00 a.m. County Attorney, are there any executive session?
No executive session tonight, no.
Okay. Hearing that, we're now calling for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you all, and have a good evening.